Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see, and have not seen it. To hear what you hear, and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise, and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
Islamic terrorists have struck again, targeting vulnerable children. Over the weekend, Boko Haram burned children alive in Nigeria, and ISIS bombed school children in Syria.
This is what's left of homes in the village of Delori, Nigeria, after Boko Haram went on a rampage Saturday night. Heavily armed gunmen and at least 3 suicide bombers attacked. They set much of the village afire. Children let out blood-curdling screams as they burned alive in their huts. 2 nearby refugee camps were also attacked. Nigerian army troops arrived but were outmanned and outgunned by the terrorists. Charred corpses and bullet-ridden bodies were counted Sunday. At least 86 people were killed and another 62 people injured in the attack. 3 females were among the suicide bombers. Nearly 3,000 miles away, Islamic State terrorists struck in the heart of Syria, this time in a Shiite neighborhood south of Damascus. They exploded 2 bombs on Sunday in an area protected by Lebanon's Hezbollah. The first was a suicide car bomb.
We were on the street and the car suddenly exploded. A lot of children were killed because the school was out at that time. I was just carrying children out of the building and sent them to the hospital.
As people gathered to help dead and injured children, another blast occurred in the midst of the crowd, this time from an ISIS terrorist wearing a suicide vest. At least 45 people were killed, 110 wounded. This man said the attacks were meant to deter peace talks from moving forward in Geneva. This resident said people are unafraid the talks will move forward. Syrian government representatives and anti-government coalition negotiators arrived in Geneva last Friday to begin peace talks. They last met 2 years ago. The coalition insists a number of conditions be met before the talks begin. They want an immediate ceasefire so humanitarian aid can be delivered to starving and suffering Syrians.
Tonight, a blizzard is sweeping across much of Middle America. The zone of snow extends from Colorado to Wisconsin. More than 13 million people are under the threat of winter weather. Nearly a foot of snow has fallen in Colorado alone in just 24 hours. In Kansas, vehicles had to be dug out. Blowing snow has made driving treacherous with little visibility. Big rigs have become stranded. Some sedans didn't even have a chance. Even snowplows were struggling. The snow cut power to at least 1,600 customers in Lincoln, Nebraska, where Moni and Lee Hedrick live.
It's a moment where you kind of go back to where people didn't have power, and you have to learn how to adapt.
Elsewhere today, it was unusually warm, from Chicago to New Orleans. Nashville set a record, 75 degrees. That warmth combined with strong winds will cause severe thunderstorms and a looming threat of tornadoes for nearly 9 million people from the Gulf Coast to Illinois.
Defense Secretary Ashton Carter says Russia is the top threat to the U.S., followed by China, North Korea, Iran, and ISIS.
It is an ominous show of force and an unmistakable signal by the U.S. to Vladimir Putin. The White House says it wants to quadruple the money it spends on its forces in Europe, a move that could ramp up tensions between America and Russia, which U.S. commanders view as a top threat to national security.
We're taking a strong and balanced approach to deter Russian aggression.
Analysts say that approach means the Pentagon is likely sending many more heavy weapons, armored vehicles, and other equipment to its NATO allies in Central and Eastern Europe.
I can't underscore how big a deal it is, because it's not just the equipment going in there being pre-positioned, but also the people will be there, again, rotating through on a regular basis, and it's about 5,000 troops.
U.S. officials say the added weapons will ensure America has a combat brigade always ready to deploy in Eastern Europe. Even though Putin's been quiet recently along his borders with his chief NATO rivals, analysts see the latest U.S. moves as a way to counter Putin's previous aggression in Ukraine. His deployment of naval forces, including submarines, near his rivals, even using his Air Force to buzz this American carrier in what some call a Cold War-style cat and mouse.
Mr. Putin believes Western leaders are weak. He believes that by intimidation, he can persuade Western leaders to adopt a softer course in response to his aggression in Ukraine and perhaps elsewhere.
But if America is going to counter that aggression with a heavy show of force near Putin's western flank, experts say there are risks, including the possibility of more Putin saber-rattling.
Well, I think you're going to hear a lot of rhetoric coming out of Moscow. You're going to hear Kremlin officials saying that, oh, once again, NATO's encircling Russia.
Former Pentagon official Evelyn Farkas says Putin's also likely to respond by showing that he won't back down. He may have his warplanes buzz more American ships or bases. He might send his submarines out to menace American ships or their allies. A Russian official responded strongly to the planned U.S. moves, telling CNN they are destabilizing to European security, an attempt by the United States to escalate tensions. And he said there should be no doubt Russia will defend its national security interests.
Turning overseas, there was a bang and suddenly a gaping hole in a jetliner over war-torn Somalia today.
Cell phone video shot on the plane while still in flight shows oxygen masks blowing in the wind near the hole in the Airbus 321. Some passengers towards the back of the plane can be seen wearing their own oxygen masks. Once on the ground, the damage to the plane was clearly visible, with pieces of the fuselage curled out from the body of the plane. All 74 passengers and crew were evacuated. Aviation officials say 2 people were injured.
Got some breaking news I want to get to here. We've been reporting on this. We're learning more about that explosion that caused this huge hole. This is a passenger plane. It was mid-air. This explosion happened. We're learning about the man who was actually thrown out of the plane when something went off here. Robin Creel is on the phone with me now as this plane was over, Mogadishu? Robin, what do you know?
Hi, Brooke. Well, what we know at the moment is that the device that investigators believe was the explosive device was actually a laptop, and that there was some kind of an explosive device either inside the laptop or it was indeed a laptop bomb. We also know that the man who was ejected from the plane just over Mogadishu after the plane had taken off is the suspect behind this bombing. Now, investigators obviously say that they're not sure if he is a member of any terror group, particularly Al-Qaeda-linked militant group Al-Shabaab, which is so very active in Mogadishu and in Somalia. But they are investigating why exactly he sat in that seat and why the device, which, as I said, they believe was a laptop bomb, why it was placed in such a strategic place over the wing of the plane, which is over the engines. If it had been any higher, it was about 12 to 14,000 feet when this device went off. If it had been a cruising altitude at around 30,000 feet, it would have likely brought the plane down.
For the first time, a health emergency has been declared in this country because of the Zika virus, which is suspected of causing birth defects.
Doctors in Dallas in the southern United States are advising Zika-infected patients, or those showing symptoms, to abstain from sexual contact or to use protection. This after they say they confirmed the state's first case of sexually transmitted Zika infection. The virus is largely believed to be carried by mosquitoes and transmitted through bites. But in 2009, a biologist from Colorado who had visited Africa transmitted Zika to his wife through intercourse, in what was the first known sexual transmission. In Colombia, officials were already handing out condoms this week, but in order to prevent pregnancy. Infected mothers-to-be face the biggest health risks.
At least 11 civilians have been killed in militant rocket attacks in the Syrian city of Daraa. The Syrian news agency says that dozens of people, most of them women and children, were also wounded in the attacks which took place on the residential neighborhoods of the southern city. In a separate raid, the Jaish al-Islam militant group fired rockets and mortar shells at a suburb of the capital, Damascus. A high school was destroyed and 3 staff members were injured. Foreign-sponsored militancy, which began in March 2011, has claimed the lives of more than 260,000 people and has displaced almost half of the country's population.
A blizzard for one half of the country and summer-like severe weather for the other, all from the same massive storm system.
It got bad quick. The roads were covered. Snow is coming down pretty hard.
Whiteout conditions closed highways from Colorado to the Dakotas. The storm bringing up to a foot of snow in Wisconsin. Some areas getting 2 inches in only an hour. Down south, the storm looking much different.
Tornado on the ground, tornado on the ground.
Several tornadoes were reported in Mississippi, one tearing across a community college campus. In Alabama, an extremely dangerous tornado hit near Aliceville, damaging homes as well as a federal prison.
I was too busy praying to worry about what was going on. I was just calling on the name of Jesus, asking him to take care of me. I didn't know what had happened until I came out of that closet and I saw everything around. Yeah, I got a little nervous then, but I was grateful to God. He brought us through it.
A total of 6 tornadoes have been reported in Mississippi and Alabama. Severe weather for the Midwest is expected to end today as that storm system works its way towards the eastern seaboard.
Russia says it has serious grounds to suspect that Turkey is preparing for a military incursion into Syria. The Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov says there are signs of hidden preparations by the Turkish armed forces to take action in the Syrian territory. Earlier, Moscow once again rejected Turkey's recent allegation that a Russian warplane violated Turkish airspace. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman said Moscow believes Ankara's claim is a cover-up for Turkish military activities on the Syrian border. Maria Zakharova added that Turkey has yet to provide evidence that Russian jet fighters violated its airspace. Tensions between the two countries have been high since the shootdown of a Russian bomber by Turkey over Syria in late November. Ankara insists the Russian jet had trespassed into its airspace.
New indications tonight that Kim Jong-un is about to launch a long-range rocket into space. A U.S. official tells CNN North Korea may already be fueling a rocket at its Dongchang-ri site.
Whenever they get real close is when they'll move it over to the launch pad. We won't have a lot of warning at that point.
Newly released satellite images from the monitoring group 38 North show the presence of vehicles, including buses for personnel, at the launch site. The images show another ominous sign about the launch tower.
They've made it higher, 10 meters higher, since the last time they tried one
What
of
does
these
that mean?
launches. Well, it could be that it's a bigger rocket.
A bigger rocket with a longer range, possibly capable of hitting the continental United States. Kim's regime has already declared it will launch a satellite into space as early as this weekend. While the regime says it's an Earth observation satellite, experts say that's a cover.
They can claim it's a civilian satellite, but that's the same technology that you would need to put an ICBM warhead anywhere you want on the face of the Earth.
The expected path of this launch has the U.S., South Korean, and Japanese militaries on alert tonight. The first stage of the rocket is supposed to drop into the Yellow Sea off the coast of South Korea. A cover for the actual satellite should fall into the East China Sea. Then another stage drops into the Philippine Sea. But the U.S. and its allies say they'll shoot these components out of the sky if they go astray. Coming on the heels of North Korea's fourth nuclear bomb test, analysts believe Kim's doing this to build his stature inside his country, to show he can stand up to the U.S. and his other enemies. But they worry the young, violent dictator might miscalculate.
We know less about him than his father and his grandfather. We even have concerns that perhaps he doesn't understand the concepts of red lines, that he might stumble across a red line that his father or grandfather would have known to stop short of.
Zimbabwe has declared a state of disaster in most rural areas of that country hit by a severe drought. Public Works Minister said the number of people requiring food aid has risen to nearly 2.5 million, which is 26% of the population. The official said all 60 rural districts of Zimbabwe are affected by the crisis. The African nation has suffered perennial shortages in recent years and has resorted to importing grain from neighboring countries to meet its needs. A regional drought worsened by the El Niño weather phenomenon has affected South Africa and Zambia as well as Zimbabwe, leaving tens of thousands of cattle dead, dams depleted, and crops written off.